Cindy was born in St. Paul, Minnesota in 1955 and baptized here at the cathedral. Her mother was Irish, Catholic, and unmarried. She stayed at the Catholic infant home and gave Cindy up for adoption after her birth at the Catholic hospital. She was soon adopted by Mike and Mary O'Shaughnessy, who loved and raised her well in Red Wing, Minnesota. In 2009, after years of searching, she discovered who her birth parents were. They were here in St. Paul for a time, but moved to Boston, married, and had 3 more children. Cindy traveled to Boston to meet her siblings, and then to Ireland to meet many family members. This is the story. So when did you first know you were adopted?
It's just like I always knew. I didn't remember that I was ever told. I just always knew that I was chosen.
What made you first want to look for your birth family?
I think like when you're a teenager, like 13 or so, you start to think about identity, and so that's when I remember then that it was kind of wondering about what my mother was like, and did I look like her, and where was she, and had kind of a fantasy about, what she was like, and so then just started talking about that with like my friend Lori in particular about, someday we'd go get in her car, and travel around America, and we'd find her. It's a very realistic idea. Yeah, I didn't really do anything at all till about right the time I was pregnant with Matt, so like 83. Although the information I have says 84, so maybe I, started to look into it, and I contacted Catholic Charities and asked, I think 2 things: generic information or whatever general information they could provide, and then whether, I think either of my parents had ever said they were open to, if I ever was looking for contact, and that wasn't the case, but Catholic Charities did give me some general information. And also then my dad, Mike, had given me some papers, and it said I was Mary Ann Walsh. So I don't think I really knew that Mary Ann Walsh name till I was an adult, and he gave me that. So that between that and the general information, I knew some things. I knew both my parents were born in Ireland. I knew my mother had been a maid or a nursemaid. I knew she'd come to Pittsburgh. I knew there were a bunch of brothers and sisters that she had, and twins that had passed away. The other thing I did was I made a copy of all the Walshes in Pittsburgh and St. Paul, and I wrote this letter, but I never sent it, and it made up some story that I was looking for a friend of my mother's and describing, what my mother would be like without saying what I was really doing, but I never ever sent any of them. And then I did hire a detective agency that they never give up. That was their motto, but then they gave up because I couldn't give them any information. And then like 2 years ago, I finally paid the money to Catholic Charities for a formal search. And then what that is that they have you write a letter with non-identifying information that they hold, and then if they find anything, like they would reach my mother, they would say, I have this letter, would you accept it? And they find that usually people don't turn down a letter that somebody's already prepared and that they have. So I did that, but she would call me and give me updates. Not too often. Usually I called her. But, she'd find things and say, well, I think they got married. Or I think they're both dead. But it was always sort of a hunch because she couldn't get any. She'd send out for death certificates and couldn't get anything. And so at the end of that 2 years, she basically kind of hit the wall and said, well, that was sort of it. But she would help me if I wanted to petition the court, which would be the Goodhue County, to open my files in Catholic Charities and allow me to see them. And what that would do is give me first names and other people's first names, etc. So in December 2008, so just this last December, I did petition the court, and real quickly they allowed it. And so then Catholic Charities gave me the file, and from that I learned my mother's name was Nora, and her mother's name was Nora, and her father's name was John, and kind of who all the brothers and sisters were. And my alleged father was a guy named Joe McDonough. And so I started looking, using Ancestry.com, started looking for information, like you go through Social Security, marriage, you go through all these things. I actually found when she came over from Ireland, at least I believed it was because it fit, and she came from Ireland to the U.S., if that was, again, her name was Nora Walsh at the time. I started looking for Nora Walsh death certificates and Nora McDonough death certificates. I ordered some. The first one that came, and then really the only one that came, was from Boston, which I'd never heard anything about Boston in Catholic Charities. But sure enough, it was her, because on a death certificate it lists your parents' names, including your mother's maiden name, and that matched. And then it said she had been survived by her husband, Joe McDonough, and they gave an address. And so with that information, I started searching more. I looked for, now that I had more information about him, I ordered a death certificate, found one that I thought was right, and that's a long story on how that I finally got that, but I did get it. And then when I got that, it said he was survived by Kathy Costello and gave an address. And even though he died in 1990, I believe it was 7 or 1998, I looked at Deck's white pages, and sure enough, Kathy Costello still lived at that address. So at that point I knew I had either a stepsister, a half-sister, or a full sister. Well, like I mentioned, I saw it in Deck's that she still lived there. There was a phone number. So I just called the number, and I hadn't really planned this out very well. So I just called the number, and she wasn't there, but her son answered, and now I know that was Brandon, and I think he just graduated from 8th. I can't remember. It's sometime, he's in middle school or somewhere, so I don't know exactly what grade he's in. But he's really friendly, and I said, he goes, can I take a message? And I said, oh, no, she doesn't know me. I'll just call back. And he's like, no, I'll take a message. So I said, well, I think we might be related. I'm looking into my family tree. Oh, she's really into that too. And I said, oh, okay, well, was Joe McDonough her dad? Oh, yeah. And I said, was Nora McDonough, was that her stepmom? And he said, no, that's her mom. And so right then I knew it wasn't some, stepsister, half-sister, it could potentially have been a full-blooded sister. So at that point I kind of lost it and said, well, then I think that might be my sister. And so earlier I had given him my name and phone number. So kind of said, okay, goodbye, and hung up and thought, oh, that was kind of bad. But next morning kind of waited for a call, and we had to go to the airport, so I had to kind of put it out of my mind for, a week or so. Well, now I know that, it was around April 1st. It wasn't quite there, but they thought it was an April Fool's joke, and I guess their dog is Cindy or something, so they never called me back because they thought it was just either a wrong number or a goof or something. So then not till I got back from Scotland, and I couldn't sleep anyway because I was, on the Scottish time, got up at 4:30 in the morning and kind of unpacked our bags. And I'd been laying in bed for a long time thinking about the letter I was going to write to Kathy Costello. And so I wrote that, and I basically said, you know, my name's Cindy O'Shaughnessy, but I was born Mary Ann Walsh. I hope your mother told you about me, but you know, if not, I don't want to cause you any pain, but I'll just lay it out for you. And so then I copied all the records that I had to sort of show why I would think that. I also sent a copy of the letter that they had me prepare for my mother in case there had been contact. And then I also put our Christmas letter in so they could see kind of what I looked like and what my family was like and what we enjoyed. So that's the phone call, and I sent that letter off on the Monday before Easter.
It was Good Friday, and I was off to go to school. I was going for my bachelor's, and I took the packet, and I looked at the name, and I said, "What's going on? What is this?" And I opened it up, and as I was reading it, I was in shock, and I said, "What's this all about?" And going through the paperwork and kind of wondering who is this person and what does she want, and then all of a sudden, as I was going through the packet, I saw my mom's name in my mom's handwriting, and everyone knows their mom's handwriting from report cards, from notes to school. And I looked at it, and I knew it was true. I knew that my mom had given up a little girl for adoption, and then that's when it hit me that I had a sister, and I couldn't believe it. So, which is hard to believe. I went to school. I went to the library and kind of just pushed it out of my mind. And then I came home that night and couldn't sleep. Went to bed but couldn't sleep. And then the next morning I called everyone, my two brothers and a good friend of ours, Anne Marie, and they came over. And we have a small little breezeway, and we all just sat there and started talking about it. My sister-in-law Charlene, my brother Coley, my sister-in-law Claire, Pat, and then Allison, Aaron, and then all of a sudden Anne Marie walked in with wine and beer, and we all just sat down and we went through the material together. And we read it over and talked about it, and then we couldn't believe it. We were in shock that our parent, my mom and dad, at that time it was a little confusing, but it did say on the paperwork that it was Joseph McDonough. And then we talked all about that, and I think the whole consensus was like that they kept this quiet. They never told us. My mom didn't tell us, though she died when she was 48, and her dad died at 68, and he didn't say anything at any time. And then and it took a couple of days, and then I called Cindy.
And then on the Tuesday after Easter, I got a phone call, and actually the phone rang, and you looked at it and said, "Oh, I think you're going to want to take this," because it said Costello. And sure enough, it was her. And they had no clue, absolutely no clue. I'd shocked them, and they had to have a big family meeting on Saturday with their kids. And it turned out not only did I have a sister, but I had a brother, Coley, who was 50, who had just gotten married for the first time in October. I had a brother, Joe.
What did Joe and Coley say? What were their thoughts to begin with?
I think it was all like shock that we didn't know this, and wow, we have a sister, and I think that was the main thing. I was more into the nuts and bolts of it. I wanted to know, so I wanted to know more information, and I took all the pictures that I had, pictures. We had a lot of pictures from Pittsburgh, and they were in this red photo album, and I remember placing them in a newer album, and we were going through them. And I knew my mom and dad were in Minnesota. I knew they went to Pittsburgh because I remember the stories. Not many stories, but I knew that they traveled there. So then I found them. I could not believe I found 4 pictures of mom and dad in Minnesota. And when I turned it over, it said St. Paul, Minnesota. But we were like, when? You know, she was skinny in the picture. And she was holding her hands up, and they seemed happy. So it was confusing on that end too. There was a lot of questions at that time, and I think that's what Coley and Joey were wondering. But I don't think they were as not as private detective as I was. I really wanted to find out what happened. I think they just accepted it right away. And I accepted it, but I wanted to know why. Why did mom and dad give a baby Cindy up for adoption? I started thinking of stories, because I always say when you lose a parent young, you only remember the conversations as that age. You know, I was 17, 18 when she passed, so all of my conversations are as of 17 and 18-year-old. And I remember going to a wedding and sitting there, because my dad didn't like weddings, and we sat at the wedding, and my mother pointed out 3 couples. Kathy, that couple had a baby before they got married, and they kept the baby. Kathy, that couple had a baby before they got married, and they had that baby. That couple, and I was like, why is she telling me? I think I was 12 at the time. And I was like, why is she telling me this? But I think it was, my mom was trying to tell someone what happened, but she couldn't. We don't think she had, you know, we don't think she told anyone. And that made me sad. Sad for her.
So here Kathy and I have one conversation, and we've agreed to send letters to each other, kind of the snail mail thing. In the meantime, you know, Allison and Aaron and Haley are just going back and forth on, you know, Facebook messaging. And so in like within a short period of time, I've seen pictures, and you know, I know so much more through Haley, because I think there's just less emotion involved. They're all excited about meeting cousins, where, you know, we're just, Kathy and I are just being a little more cautious. So, but she sent me this wonderful book, and it turned out that book came to my house the same time something I prepared for her came to her place. I had sent her like an autobiography of myself and my family, and I also sent a book, The Girls That Went Away, that helped me a lot understand what happened to girls in the 40s, 50s, 60s, early 70s when they became pregnant, and kind of how things were you know, set up to adopt those kids out. So anyway, she sent me something that had ancestors' pictures and passports, and so a lot of it was just wonderful. So
you're going to meet your siblings next week. What emotions do you have?
Well, I'm kind of nervous. I know I'll just be overwhelmed when I meet them. I mean, there's just no way around that. But I don't know. I think I've pretty much kind of gone through a lot of it already, and I know, you know, it's not like, oh, I'm here with all the people I'm going to spend my Thanksgiving and Christmas with. You know, it's not going to. We're still, you know, we're raised in different families, but there's still a bond there. So I have curiosity to see traits, to kind of hear what they did during their lives, when I was doing what I was doing, you know, sort of in parallel. So these emotions are curiosity. I've already kind of dealt with the idea of, well, do they like me or don't like me, and I think I'm beyond that now.
We flew to Boston with the idea that Cindy would first just meet with her siblings alone. So how'd it go Wednesday afternoon?
Kathy and Coley came up here, and the plan was, I think, to meet here first, talk a little bit, and then go out to lunch. But just started talking, and pretty soon it was after 3 o'clock, and I knew you guys would be back, so we kind of just decided we'd wait, and we'd all go off together. It was pouring down, so the plan to see the neighborhood, that wasn't going to work. But no, it was great. It felt very open right away.
Coley talked a lot about his dad, and particularly that, it seemed like, and how his dad had kind of fallen apart after Nora died.
And we met in Hull on a rainy day. I know they picked Hull to have some sunshine, but it was pouring. Joey couldn't meet us. We were going to meet him afterwards. So Coley and I came in, and so we sat down, and then Coley kind of opened up a lot more than I did. You would think I had been doing all the talking, but Coley opened up a lot how life was after my mom passed, how my dad struggled with it, you know, and he really opened up about things that I didn't even know that affected Coley that way. So I was kind of looking at Coley like, stop telling her all the bad news. And but she was great. She was, it just felt good right away. And then I recall the next morning when they came to the house, and I said, sorry about last night. What did you think with Coley telling those stories? And she goes, I was just glad I wasn't there. And it was just awesome. It was accepting, and I knew we were going to be okay. I knew that this was going to work.
Hi. Hello. Hey, Cindy. How are you? Good. Good. Hello.
Got married in that house. These are mostly old Pittsburgh pictures, Cindy. This is like she went to Atlantic City.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
That's why Peggy goes, Mom was a little your mother was chunky.
I'd like to be that chunky.
Yeah. And this was her aunt, the mother's sister, Catherine. That's who they all came out to. She looked good. She
Okay.
never married.
So Catherine,
They're downstairs.
Catherine would have been, and she was here in the U.S.
Yeah, that's who they came out to
that's
in
who
Pittsburgh.
that's why they went to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, to her.
Okay.
And she never married.
Okay.
And she ended up retiring in Ireland, but she lived with us for a while, I guess, because my mom always said that she stayed up all night. She loved John F. Kennedy, and she stayed up all night for the election.
Oh, wow.
Have to tell them they're all on it with you.
Oh, God. And you know what they called her? They,
Ani.
Ani.
Ani. O-N-N-I-E. That's how we used to
Ani.
print Ani, yes.
Do you-
I only knew her as Ani.
Really?
Yes, yeah.
Do you think I think her middle
She
name
was
might have been
Sonia.
Honor. Do you think that's where it came from?
H-O-N-O-R.
they
I'll have to ask my sisters.
because
to-
her, I think when she was, the information they gave me when she became a citizen, it says Honor.
H-O-N-O-R.
Yeah, instead of her, and then
Of
maybe
Nora.
somewhere it says Nora, but
Yeah.
as if that was her first name, and I'm wondering if maybe that was why it started. But
And then when Erin was born, Joe and Shaw called me because they knew on a lot of her mom's documentation it said Honor. So they said, Kathy, how about if we name Erin Honor
Okay.
McDonough? But Honor, but she's the only one that has Honor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then her nickname was Ani.
Yeah, that's what I
was
was wondering
Honor.
if it came from that maybe.
But on. Cole used to come every day, so we would get like all these different plants, but now we don't come. Yeah, it's not that. And then we did the Celtic, and that was
Celtic Cross.
Yeah,
that's
that's cool.
Galway is Connor, the
Oh, yeah.
Claddagh ring, and that must be just emblems of Ireland.
Yep.
And then we put because she loves St. Anthony, so
Oh,
we
yes,
put
you
St.
said that.
Anthony
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
So, and your dad used to like to come over here real
Oh,
regular?
every Sunday, Steve.
Wow.
And to us, when you think about it, we were like Kaylee and them.
Yeah.
We were like, oh God, all right. Well, we went.
Uh-huh.
Joey got away. That youngest got away with it. I always do. Coley and I went, and then as the years went on, he stopped. He didn't want to come as much, But
We headed home after 5 days in Boston. For me, this is truly a story with a happy ending, even though it's really just the beginning of getting to know my sister and brothers and their families. I never would have dreamed that there would be such great people in my future, especially back when I was searching all those years and hitting all those dead ends. I feel very blessed.
And the story goes on. Cindy and her birth family have continued to get together in Minnesota and Massachusetts, on vacations, our son's wedding, Cindy's birthday and retirement party. The siblings even reshot some childhood photos and included her photo with them. Kathy and Cindy have done a lot of research, but still really don't know what went on with Joe and Nora in Minnesota. About 6 months before Cindy was born, her mother requested proof of baptism from her parish in Galway, Ireland. This would have been required to be married in the Catholic Church. Did it not arrive in time? Did the Catholic infant home pressure her to give up the baby? The answers may never be known. Because Cindy's birth parents were both born and raised in Ireland, she had an uncle and aunt, plus many cousins there to meet. We traveled to Ireland in 2010 with Kathy and her family, and again in 2018 with Coley and Claire. In 2010, we were met at the airport by Mary Nyland and Nora Martin, 2 of the 14 first cousins we would meet.
The next morning, Nora, Mary, and Chris picked us up again. This time we were going to see Michael Walsh and his family. Michael is Delia's son, another first cousin. Michael's aide-de-camp to the president, Mary McAleese, and he had arranged to give us a personal tour of the president's residence.
Diaspora, people who've left Ireland and their families. It's a light to say you're welcome back to Ireland.
Okay.
That's the
That's really cool.
and
That's for you guys.
that's it.
I sat at the president's desk, and I believe I might have accidentally signed an order making my husband Irish.
Such a good driver.
On Saturday, we went to Delia's home. I had met her daughter, Mary Cox, back in July 2009.
This is our family picture. This was taken, my dad
That's your
passed
mother
away a
right
few
there.
months after this.
Okay.
So this is all of my brothers and sisters.
Oh, so that's
all
Delia.
Delia and
Uh-huh.
Martin, another name Martin.
Another
But
name?
my dad is Martin.
Martin?
Martin is Martin.
Yeah.
Martin, yeah.
Okay.
And my brother, a police officer.
Okay.
He's retired in Mayo. He's in the army. He's a commodore in the army.
Okay.
He's still in there. Nuala. And the reason she was called Nuala is my mom was dreaming about her grandmother the night before she was born.
Okay.
So she called her
Nuala.
Nuala, Kathleen, Anne, Bernie, Nora, myself, and Mairead.
Wow.
So they're all the names right
Yeah.
there.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's lovely to meet you. Thank you. Yeah. And you look like Collie. I bet.
The next time. Yeah, that's right. But no, there's a lot of things too. We said, oh, we would have thought I would have brought this, or you know, you just don't.
Yeah, so stay in downtown.
You could have slept here, you know.
Because really, it's only 10 minutes on the road, just the traffic stay was bad.
Sure.
And Mary is just around the corner.
And then who was born in this town?
Our great grandparents called St. Seamus.
You're asking me. I'm relying on her.
Mary Nealon was great. She came to Leanon to pick us up. We stopped at the home house, my great-grandparents' village. The home had recently been sold.
Maybe we look around a bit.
Not at all.
Our great grandparents were born here or lived here.
I think I saw pictures of them the other day.
Did you? Oh wow.
One was, what was it, 1975, and it was packed in, jammed into a door frame to plaster up against it. And then other newspapers were 1970. So, and even like what I was saying with the lime, the layers of lime, they painted with they burned the limestone and burn the limestone basically. Something that used to happen around here, the big old traditional boats, the hookers, they'd fill them up with turf and they bring them out to the islands in Clare and places where they don't have as much, they don't have any turf on the islands, out in Inishmore and Inishmore and Sayre. And to bring the boat back, to ballast it, because you need weight at the bottom of the boat, they bring back stones.
Okay.
Because the stone is different to what we have here is granite, what do you call it in English? Granite.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when you burn the limestone, it's calcium carbonate. It turns into a white, chalky substance. And when you put water on it, it makes a paint.
Okay.
You paint the walls with it. But it also, it makes a kind of a render for the wall as well, depending on the process they use. So there's like layers upon layers upon layers of that kind of thing on the walls. Now I'd have to take that off and put it back on again. You can't use cement and concrete because the walls need to breathe because they don't have a damp-proof course in them.
I see.
And the same thing with floors. Like, that's concrete, so that's since Portland cement, and these are laid on it. So I assume they, in their time, in St. James's time, there was concrete, but they probably still use the old traditional methods of building.
I couldn't believe our good luck in meeting Ronan, who was so open to showing us around and so knowledgeable of the old building methods. Mary and I had to try to recreate the Seamus and cot pose by the window.
This is my dad, Michael. This is Cindy.
I'm Michael. Cindy, nice to meet you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Good.
Yes. I never was in a still house. Imagine how she was in a still house and she threw back a big glass.
My father said, oh yeah, we'll do so. That means, oh, you'll be drunk.
That's right.
Annie and Michael were a beautiful couple in the 1940s when they met in London, and they're a beautiful couple now. Annie was so positive. It was great to meet my mother's sister. The next day, we went to Lettermore, Natalia, where my mother was born and her father was born. We all gathered at Uncle Martin's home.
Når vi mye gammel på jakkel med hasu, på kjol med noe sati, har skis og gusvås, ahanirsta mera tjål, stil fone meg agar, afardom gomor mor, vamos allí.
That's great.
Where's Annie?
Decided.
Yes, one. Be Shane on. That's it. That's it.
We took a picture at the family spring where Kathy and her mother and brothers posed in 1964. We arrived and met another first cousin, Mickey, along with his wife Cot and his family. They were renovating the house my father lived in most of his childhood. We then walked down to the home he was born in, and his parents Coleman and Ann spent much of their lives. We went to the cemetery by the sea, where my paternal grandparents and uncles are buried. They told me about Uncle Marcus's funeral, where Coley, my brother, and all the nephews were pallbearers and carried the casket on the beach.
Same story I did. You know, he worked too hard. You know how God loved them.
Died in 67. Your grandfather.
Yeah.
67.
Pop came over for that.
People ask me, how was your trip? And I find myself at a loss for words. I say things like wonderful, great, amazing, overwhelming, but no word really fits. I can't imagine people being more welcoming and generous to a late-breaking stranger. All my life I've been proud of the fact that I was Irish. Since the 1980s, when I learned my birth parents were from County Galway, I was proud of that. I thought that might be all I would ever know. But I was a bit obsessed with my identity, which paid off. Now I walk the land where my mother, father, their parents, and grandparents were born. I probably learned more and have seen more than most people that aren't adopted. But more than that, I feel I have been embraced by my extended family. So now I am not only proud of where I come from, but the people that I come from. I love the land, the music, the history, the humor, and my family.
So Coley, what's it like doing a 10-day pub crawl in Ireland with your long-lost sister?
Well, the worst part about it, and it was kind of revealing, was that everywhere we went, Cindy had a tab. So we kept reaching in our pockets to pay off these tabs, you know? So we got to see a lot of pubs and pay off a lot of debts over here. I didn't realize she was over here that much.
Truly crawling.
Truly crawling.